like, we know the backstory. Steve Kerr is somebody who has obviously at times been frustrated by the limitations in Jonathan's game, and it's pretty evident that the Warriors are willing to move on. They really need that salary slot. There's only so many ways for them to meaningfully add to this roster and try to continue the Steph, Draymond, now Jimmy Butler era. So, I mean, they're trying to thread the needle here, and that's where it goes back to the staring contest.
We now welcome Sam Amick of The Athletic to the Morning Roast. Sam, good morning. What's going on, man?
Good morning, gentlemen. Thanks for having me.
Well, obviously we just got done sort of going through your piece, but if you could sort of sum it up for our audience in regards to the next stage, it sounds like, of the negotiations between Jonathan Kuminga, the Sacramento Kings, the Phoenix Suns, and what has led to, as you've described, sort of a stalemate between the two sides. What is the latest on Jonathan Kuminga and a potential resolution here?
Yeah, I mean, the main thing I was trying to offer clarity on is it hadn't really been known exactly what the Kings were putting out there in terms of an offer and why the Warriors, hadn't bidden on it just yet. And so that's, Malik Monk, who's obviously a pretty darn good player, a guy who was in the Sixth Man of the Year running not too long ago, and who, until this recent front office regime change was kind of seen as part of their future. Malik and a first-round pick that eventually got to a place where it was 2030 lottery protected. The Warriors, as has been reported, ESPN had this part first, is like they've reached the stage where they seem to be done talking about sign and trade scenarios. They're telling teams that, all right, we can't get to a middle ground here. And honestly, it really feels like the Sacramento thing has been a whole lot closer than Phoenix. My understanding on the Suns side was that, that the Warriors look at their roster and just really don't see much that gets the job done as far as an, executable sign and trade scenario. And that part's interesting because Phoenix is offering a whole lot more money and years than the Kings are for Kuminga. Sacramento's coming in with 3 years for $63 million, and the Suns reportedly are 4 for $90. So everywhere you look, to your point, there's just obstacles, and I think we're back in a holding pattern for the moment.
So do you get the sense that this might have been the best deal on the table? But I mean, from your prerogative, for all parties involved?
Yeah, I do. And honestly, I don't want to get this part, kind of strike the wrong tone, but I'm not trying to indicate that it's close at all. The Warriors have not, they've characterized it as not being very close with the Kings. But, hypothetically, in my mind, if the Kings were willing to budge on the protections, so the first discussion was the 2031 first-round pick, and the Warriors would get the least favorable of the Kings or the Spurs first-rounder. Warriors didn't want that. So then they talked about 2030, and if and that's lottery protected. So to me, if the Kings down the road came off those lottery protections, maybe did top 12 or kind of, budged a little bit from there, does that change it for the Warriors? And then the other, element that has got to be accounted for is that the Warriors, to do this deal, would have to move off of either Moses Moody or Buddy Hield. And my understanding is that there's avenues for them to do that. As far as appetite, I don't know how they see. I mean, you guys know, like, Buddy had some incredible moments in the playoff run last year. And so I don't know, as far as just their preference, how they see that. That's another complication. But I'd see more of a pathway to that deal than any other. And to your question, yeah, I think that's the best thing out there as far as what I know.
All right, so I just have to come out and ask, like, directly, do you get the sense Jonathan Kuminga just does not want to be on the Warriors at all?
Yeah, I think that's pretty evident. He's talking about or signaling that he's potentially willing to pick up the qualifying offer, which is, about as dicey a move as you can come across in today's NBA. If you break down the math and you start talking about $7.9 million, versus the 21.7 the Warriors are offering him to stay, it's tough for him to make that up, in his next contract. And I think speaks volumes about how he sees that situation. He wants control. and he wants, his freedom. But that's where restricted free agency is challenging. As far as like just take the contract and the money aside and the mood, I mean, that part, like we know the backstory. Steve Kerr is somebody who has obviously at times been frustrated by the limitations in Jonathan's game, and it's pretty evident that the Warriors are willing to move on. The thing that they are trying to salvage here is that they really need that salary slot. There's only so many ways for them to meaningfully add to this roster and try to continue the Steph, Draymond, now Jimmy Butler era. And if Jonathan takes the QO, then you're pretty limited when the February trade deadline comes around as far as like picking up real impact players. So, I mean, they're trying to thread the needle here, and that's where it goes back to the staring contest.
Sam, from the Kings' perspective, this is, I'm with you, the best offer that we've seen so far. Do you think the Kings would be willing, and I know the Warriors have said publicly that they've shut down sign and trade talks, but do you think that the Kings would be willing to go any further, perhaps in regards to another player? The Warriors have been rumored to like younger pieces they want to build around, a Keegan Murray, a Keon Ellis, or do you think Malik Monk is the best, sort of the highest that Sacramento would go?
So it feels like the focus for the Warriors, I mean, for one, I was actually told that Keegan and Keon have not even been discussed for what it's worth. And then on top of that, the Warriors' focus seems to be on the pick. And it does seem to feel like, if the Kings went, the Warriors' request has been go completely unprotected on the 2030 first rounder. And I think if the Kings obliged, then it feels like that deal would get done. And so it feels like the focus is more on the pick than it is them trying to get any other young prospects from the Kings. And the Kings it's funny because as a team, they're not in a great spot. Obviously, they've got this roster they've got so much work to do, but the leverage that I do think they have is that Scott Perry, their first-year GM, he just got there. And his owner knows that it's going to take him a minute. And so I think he can have patience and prudence and tell the Warriors genuinely that I don't need to make this deal. I'm going to go ahead and keep trying to chip away at this roster and do things over the course of time. They see Kuminga as somebody, who I think certainly would get the fans excited about another young prospect, and they're all in on the idea, but only to a certain point. And it does feel like they're willing to walk away, which certainly the Warriors wish was not the case.
Sam, if this trade did consummate, if maybe they come off the protection, maybe the Warriors gave in, like, how do you think Malik Monk would fit with the Golden State Warriors?
I like it. I like Malik's game. It's funny. Last season, after the Kings traded De'Aaron Fox to San Antonio, you saw the limitations in Malik's game because they put him in the primary point guard spot, and he's a fantastic playmaker, but there's just something that didn't work about it. You just don't want, I don't think, Malik being the number one guy at that spot. The Warriors landscape is so much different where, you talk about him being complimentary, but being dynamic and not being asked to do some of the things that were outside of his skill set like he was last year. The guy can light it up. You know what I mean? He just absolutely can light it up. And if you even compared, like, let's say that in the Warriors front office, it was a Buddy versus Malik comparison. Malik doesn't shoot the lights out quite like Buddy does, but he can shoot that thing. And he also, in an ISO setting, just when you need to give Steph and Jimmy, a break offensively, he's dynamic. I've seen him win games for the Kings. You guys remember in the playoff series between the Warriors and the Kings, Malik had some amazing games. Yep. So basketball-wise, I think it could be fantastic. And then you add that to a high-level first. Like, it's a pretty decent offer that again, I could see transpiring in an actual deal down the road.
What do you think the Warriors want? And not necessarily just the front office, like the high-paid players on the team and the head coach. What do you think their preference is in this entire scenario? He signs a 2-year deal or whatever was on the table, takes the qualifying offer, or they just move off him altogether?
I think it's the former. I think there's a level of frustration that he won't just take this deal because, even with Jonathan's social media post yesterday, where he's talking about how he's going to bet on himself all day, like, it's not as if, I mean, I understand you're not getting the contract you want, but your starting salary with the Warriors would be $21.7 million. That's a heck of a pay raise from before. And while it does come with the type of restrictions you don't want, team option in the second season, the request to waive the no trade clause that would be part of it, like, it's still, it's a pretty decent NBA salary for a guy who is continuing to try to prove himself. He's not an established guy in this league. We just, he has moments, but it's been fits and starts. So I think their preference is for him to do the deal, because as much as it does appear that they like a player like Malik Monk, the February trade deadline could bring other scenarios, other opportunities that might work even better. And it leaves the Warriors with that flexibility and that salary slot to go shopping, like, for a big number and a guy who could make an impact.